All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Comic Book Syndicate. This is your host, Mike L. Unfortunately, the rest of the crew could not be with us this week, but we have a very important guest host joining us, who a frequent guest in the past, Murad. Thanks for joining us, Murad.
Hey, thanks for having me back on the podcast. Excited
Absolutely.
to be here.
And yeah, your history with us goes back quite a ways. In fact, you were the one who exposed me to the graphic novel The Killer way back in, what was it, 2000 and, I don't know, 9, 10, something like that?
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, it was more than 10 years ago.
Right.
When they released it, because the book was, I believe, originally released like in the late 1990s or in the early 2000s, and then got re-released in English around that time, 2007 or 8 or
right.
somewhere in.
So yeah, obviously we did review it on the Comic Book Syndicate, and I remember being a fan of it. But for those that don't know, first of all, how did you even hear about this book? Was it just recommended to you?
It was something that I just saw on the shelf, and I was always a fan of Hitman type stories
Sure.
and movies, and just kind of was like, oh, cool, it's from France. I had never really read international comics before, and so it just kind of piqued my interest. And yeah, I like that kind of hard-boiled, and I mean, it's been so long since I read the book that I watched the movie, and then afterwards reread. Well, I'm on I'm a little more than halfway through it now. And just realizing like how kind of vastly different they are.
Okay, okay.
You know,
So
at their root, you know, I think there are some similarities, but yeah.
okay, so let's talk about the book quickly. Does this movie follow the storyline of a certain? Because there's more than one graphic novel. It's a series, right?
It is a series. And the film it's 10 issues long, but they are longer than your average issue. They're almost double sized in comparison. So, you know, it's more like a 20 issue series, but packed into 10 kind of chapters. And, you know, the film pulls from certain elements, but it is, you know, wildly different in a lot of ways.
Okay, so let's talk about the movie. Then we'll jump to the comparisons between the movie and the comic.
Sure.
I'm sure if anyone who's watching this review or listening to this review, I'm sure has seen the movie. But just to summarize, basically, Michael Fassbender plays a contract killer who meticulously narrates his own, like he's narrating the story and kind of talking about how, you know, he sticks to the plan. He has kind of like a rituals that he does to help him with his accuracy and to be patient and blah, blah, blah. But basically something happens, something goes wrong. He accidentally kills the wrong person, right? And that leads him to kind of be on the run for like kind of the opening act of the film. But then when he goes back home, then he doesn't go back home, but he goes back to is it his lover?
Yeah, he goes, this is kind of his place of refuge, his hideout in the world, back in the Dominican Republic. And yeah, he has a partner there. And yeah, I mean, it comes upon her not home, and the home broken into, and finds her at the hospital, and kind of sets out on like a path of revenge.
Right. And so the film is basically a revenge story of kind of working his way up to the big boss, we'll say, right? To use a video game term. And I can just say that before seeing this film, I had heard a few mixed reviews, but as a David Fincher fan, I thought it was excellent. Maybe I have one negative thing to say about the movie, but overall, I loved this film. I thought it was meticulously directed. I thought the writing was great. I really liked Michael Fassbender's character, although some people think he was underdeveloped. And if you could look for like a film influence on this, have you ever seen Le Samurai? That's the English pronunciation. But the French film from, I think it's the late 50s.
I've not.
It is an excellent movie. I highly recommend it. Somewhat similar to this. Actually, sorry, it's 1967. Jean-Pierre Melville is the director, but an excellent movie, somewhat similar premise. Very influential film. But anyway, so check that out if you get a chance. But I thought this movie was excellent. Murad, what was your first impression of this movie?
I love this movie. I thought it was gripping from beginning to end. I was really engaged. You know, a lot of times I find myself, if something doesn't grab me, I'll pick up my phone, or, you know, I'll kind of start thinking about something else. Like if I'm not really engaged by something, I kind of start tuning out pretty quickly. Sure. And this grabbed me right from the beginning. You know, it's all internal monologue. And Fassbender has actually very few spoken lines throughout the entire film. It's all an internal monologue, and that bears a great similarity to the book. I mean, certainly the character in the book speaks to people much more than Fassbender does, but there is a ton of that internal monologue and his musings about being a killer and what it means to be a killer, and kind of like this self-justification, taking a little bit of a different direction in the film, in that he's got this kind of this ethos of a killer. Like, these are all the things that you should do to be, you know, the top, the best killer. And we don't really ever see him at his best. The first kill, we're led to believe that he's this highly trained guy, but the first hit that he tries to make is a failure and collapses in on itself, and then he's on the run and obviously kind of shaken by the situation. And then as he goes on this path of revenge, he really kind of starts to break all of his own rules along the way. I thought it was really funny. The music was great. The cinematography was great. The fight scene, I mean, there's really only one. But I just thought, like, you know, and yes, it's extremely simple, but in its simplicity, there's something nice about that for me.
Absolutely.
I love a revenge movie. I love an assassin film and an assassin story. Fassbender's great, and just all the things that make a movie great for me were there. But I know that a lot of folks, when I posted about it and, you know, gushed about it, it seems like it's a bit of a love it or leave it. A lot of people commenting, oh yeah, like in full agreement, you know, 9 out of 10, you know, 8 out of 10, anything over an 8, and that's great. You know, like there's not much to complain about 8+. And so, you know, there's a lot of that, but then there was, you know, a good 30-40% of people who were kind of like, nah, couldn't even get through it, couldn't get past the first 20 minutes. And I was just, you know, I was taken aback, but, you know, I loved it. So it's hard for me to be like, oh, you didn't like it? Why? But, you know, I was excited about it because I like the book so much. So, you know, I kind of went to it wanting to like it. It wasn't anything like the book, which I didn't really realize until I, you know, took the time to reread it today, or at least get to chapter 6 or 7 of 10. And so it's, you know, it's wildly different from the book. It takes certain elements and aspects, but I think good ones that create, you know, a new story, its own story.
You know, if someone can't even get past the opening, I can't really, I don't have much sympathy for them. And the reason is because the opening was a little bit long. However, when you go in knowing you're watching a David Fincher film, you should know that you're in safe hands, you know? And I think, unfortunately, I've been watching a lot of videos lately about how streaming is kind of killing cinema, which I'm now starting to agree with. And I think that it really, to me, this film deserved to be at the theater. And I'm not one of those people that thinks that only spectacles like Avatar and Napoleon should be at the theater. No, I think any really good film deserves a theatrical release. And this did get a limited release, but I think that I would have liked to have seen this give it a full theatrical experience and been promoted and seen it all over the talk shows and everything. I'm sure that the strike had something to do with that, but I just think that this movie was, I mean, if this isn't a good movie, what is it I mean, I can understand if you're not a fan of serial killer films or crime films, but if this is not a good film, then what is? That's my opinion, I actually think it's one of his, probably it's my favorite film from him since probably since Zodiac. I mean, I do like everything he's done, but I feel like movies like Gone Girl and even Social Network, which was great, they're kind of, I don't want to say beneath him, but I think he's meant for bigger and better things like this. And I think this is like a return to form for him.
And, a lot of, I went and watched other people's and read other people's reviews. And a lot of people who are, Fincher fans are saying kind of the opposite of you, that it's great. It's Fincher. You can't go wrong with it, but it certainly doesn't hold a candle to any of his other catalog. And for me, it's like, this is one of my favorites.
Absolutely. I agree.
And then, this and Mindhunter, his more recent projects are this and Mindhunter are really, to me, his two best. So, but I like that more, a little bit headier, a little bit more ethereal, and I love this film, and I thought it was funny. Like, it was laugh out loud, like dark humor, like what about a nice simple drowning? Just lamenting about the you can tell that he's been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so it's like him kind of working himself out of being a hitman while killing all of these people, leaving kind of a path of destruction behind him. And he doesn't lose, he finds a way, but along the way, there's always a real sense of concern. Like, he's not a hero, and so you don't have a ton of empathy for him, but then you kind of find yourself rooting for him, but he's a bad guy, but everyone that he's killing, aside from, the cab driver that, I thought, if there was a criticism that I saw that I thought, I tried to wrap my head around in a couple different ways, is like, the two people who really had the least to do, the person who really had the least to do with what happened was the cab driver.
Right.
He really had the least to do with it. And the fact that he lets the billionaire go.
Yeah, great point.
Well, he lets the billionaire who kind of set all of this in motion, while the cab driver who kind of just, so I read that criticism and heard it in a couple different reviews, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, there is something like strange. But here's the other thing, is that the proximity to his partner being almost beaten to death. So it's like, it was pretty fresh, and this is him detaching himself from his rules. Like, don't get angry, remain calm, anticipate, don't react, like all these kind of rules that he sets for himself. I think it is really a story about this guy is kind of losing it. I mean, he fucks up in the beginning, and he has this path of revenge, but he certainly, it doesn't ever seem guaranteed. Even when he's sneaking in the gym, there's a real sense of tension.
Yeah, I can see that. I think for me, I mean, I was actually shocked when he killed the cab driver, but when I said there was one criticism I had, it actually was of the ending. I thought the ending was a little bit anticlimactic, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the one thing it does do is the fact that he so cold-heartedly kills the cab driver makes you think, oh, well, now obviously he's going to kill the billionaire. But the fact that he lets him go, to me, it was deliberate to show his character. Like, this is his character. He will act this way with this guy, but he won't act that way, the same way with this other guy. And we can talk about we can talk about the ending in a minute.
He's obviously somebody who doesn't value human life all that much.
Right.
So, for him too, I think, if I could put it into perspective, it's like, letting the billionaire go is that killing the billionaire means, like he was saying, there's increase, like the richer you are, the greater increased scrutiny there's going to be on you dying. Mm-hmm. So, if he wants to be free of it, it has to stop somewhere. And he probably kind of knows that if he kills this guy, it doesn't end and it continues. And I think he wants to be free of it. One of the normies, as he says. But even at the end, and I mean, are we talking about the end?
Let's just talk about. You might as well. Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert. If you've seen the movie, you know what happens at the end. I did find it anticlimactic, and I'll tell you why. Because there's nothing wrong with a movie ending like this and not having any violent catharsis. Like, for example, Pulp Fiction ends with a Mexican standoff. A lot of movies end this way, right? Where people are just talking, but there's more tension in those movies, and it's kind of just Michael Fassbender standing there talking to the guy. The guy explains himself, and he's like, oh, okay. Now, to be honest, it happens so quickly. I actually missed Michael Fassbender's reasoning for letting him go. Do you remember what it was? Can you explain that? Because I didn't quite catch it.
I think it was for him, and I don't think it's like something that it's explicitly said, is that he's like, do we have a problem? He wanted to show this guy that he's not to be trifled with. Right. So okay. He's kind of like, do we have a problem? Like, Are you going to keep sending people after me, or do I have to kill you? Like, and if I have to kill you, that means that probably more people are going to come after me, whether it's the police, whether it's the FBI, or whether it's another killer from someone else in your business or organization, So, yeah, I think that was really kind of it. Was like, are we done here? And
sure.
Once he was done, he was like, here, okay, I guess I'll just go be rich now and lay out on my beach chair. And but you see that little twitch, like he's not meant for normalcy.
Sure.
Like he's not a normal person.
Yeah, I think what I would have liked to have seen is some type of I guess like when I say catharsis, to have Michael Fassbender hold him at gunpoint or make it very clear how easily he could have killed him or how easily he could kill him in the future. Even because again, he's kind of just standing there. I don't even know if he pulls his gun on him, but it would have been nice visually to get a little bit of suspense, to be like, oh no, what's he going to do? But you're almost like relaxed watching these two guys just talk to each other. So I think that's why I found the ending a little bit anticlimactic.
Well, I think it's because he knows that this is the professional. Like this is the person who gets hired, so he knows who he is, right? And the killer, yeah, because we don't ever actually learn his name. I mean, we see several aliases, which was also hilarious. All the different aliases. Yeah, there were a lot of funny parts to this movie, but yeah, the ending is like it's different. It's different than a lot of those type of films that usually end in like some sort of weird blaze of glory or a ton of gunfire or somebody going to jail. It ends in a way that it doesn't give you what you want, and I think like to me that I like when movies do that. Sure, that they make you kind of go like, what? Why did that? Like the movies that make you think about them and think about why did it end that way and what did it mean, and that we can have a 20-minute conversation about it and be dissecting this, after watching it once or twice and comparing it to the book or so.
I'll definitely agree with you on that. It's definitely better to subvert expectations and give you something a little bit unexpected, for sure. Let's talk about, you mentioned the fight scene. I did not expect that in this movie, but there have been some good fight scenes that I can think of, like the one in Old Boy. You've seen Old Boy, right? Mm-hmm. Great movie. Did you watch the Daredevil TV show?
Yes. Yeah.
Episode 2, everyone remembers that. The fight scene in this movie is one for the ages. I mean, a lot of people criticize the way certain films are shot, like Bourne Identity, or even Christopher Nolan's action scenes are a little bit too close. This seemed like every single move was meticulously written and directed and choreographed, but also it didn't feel choreographed in the sense that it was spontaneous and unexpected, and it was so violent. Like you could feel the pain of these guys, right?
It felt extremely real.
Right.
When you have two people who know how to exact violence and they're going up against each other.
Right.
There's this strange matchup because obviously this one guy is like a monster, right, and the other guy is a literal monster. Like he knows how to kill, and has the will to do it. And so, I thought that fight scene was great, and it made me feel like you should let David Fincher do like a Bourne-esque movie. Right. Do a darker take on 007 or something,
absolutely.
Because that fight scene was fantastic. And the dog was an all-star of that scene as well.
Like, I forgot about the dog.
The tension, like the tension in the Tilda Swinton scene, the tension during that fight, the tension when he was breaking into the gym, when he's at the outset, when he's on the run and he's hiding out at the hotel, and I felt myself being engrossed by the film. And when a TV show or a movie can do that to me, where I don't look away and I just stay laser focused on it, and I'm like, I'll go to the bathroom when it's done,
Of course.
When that happens, that's like a really magical thing, and it doesn't happen often for me. Where there's something where I'm like, I'm like, shh. Like I usually, my wife and I were happy to like just talk through a lot of what we watch, and we just kind of chat and half pay attention. But yeah, this was one of those times where it was like I knew it was something I wanted to see, and kind of went down into the basement, watched it by myself, and really enjoyed it, and thought it was a great film. But like I said, reading the book now, really kind of wildly different story. Mm-hmm. At least through these first 7 chapters. Some similarities, but some big big, wild differences as well.
So we should point out that this is also the screenwriter for this was Andrew Kevin Walker, and this is the first time he's worked with Fincher since Seven, which I am shocked that it's taken this long, because obviously Seven is what made his career. I'm a huge fan of Seven, but anyway, I think that there's a weird I think I don't want to say that people expect too much from film, because that's not what I mean. But it's like you said about the ending. You know, usually the cops come, or this happens, or there's like more resolution. But if you think of a film as more like a short story, like not a novel but a novella, it's supposed to be minimalist. Unless you're doing like an epic film, like a 4-hour Irishman type thing. I like when a movie just gives you the very bare essentials, you know. And I think Fincher, over the years, has gotten he's gotten better and better at that. I think he's less stylized now with his directing. Like the episodes he directed of Mindhunter were great, you know. And I think he's becoming more of a minimalist, and I like that about him. He's just getting down to the bare essentials, you know.
Yeah, the cinematography and it was, you know, I think the tagline for the film is "Execution is everything." And I feel like that is also like a way to describe the filmmaking.
Yes.
It's very extremely precisely and meticulously executed.
Yeah.
Every shot is thought of and thoughtful and framed in such a way, you know, it's like, as thrillers go, I thought it was, you know, it was thrilling. Like even some of the more, you know, mundane moments, you know, the guy dropping off the mail.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Kind of stops, and there's this heightened, like, what's gonna happen here?
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually forgot about that, but it reminded me of something that Hitchcock would have done, where, you know, Hitchcock would spend 20 minutes on someone cleaning the floor, and then the suspense of, is the thief going to get caught? In this film, it's like you said, it's just him standing there watching this guy deliver mail, and you're just wondering, is he going to get in the door or is he not?
Because if he turns around that corner, now he has to shoot him.
Yeah.
Like, there's no choice. Like,
yeah.
And he knows it. He's like, if this guy turns his head and sees me, like, I have to kill him, and it changes the dynamic of everything that is going on right now. And you can feel the tension in him. I loved this movie. Like, I loved this movie.
So I loved it too. So when people say that they're sick of comic book movies, they really mean they're sick of superhero movies. We should remind everybody there are plenty of comic book adaptations out there that are not Marvel and DC superheroes. They're European, Asian, or even American graphic novels about any subject matter imaginable. And again, I got to give you credit, because back in the old days when we were almost strictly doing superhero stuff, you were one of the ones that brought stuff like this to the table, right? So I have to give you thanks for that.
I've always been into this outsider stuff. I mean, I think when I was in high school, one of my teachers liked comic books. He let me the Watchmen. And ever since then, like, I was like, and Watchmen is a superhero story, but it's different. I would put it, you know, in, you know, as far as superhero stories go, like, definitely an outsider, you know, to that, but playing on a lot of those tropes, you know, like, I just, I think there are a lot of great stories, and I think comic books are just a beautiful medium to tell a story. It really is my favorite medium, and it makes for a great film, especially, you know, when it's used and adapted in a fresh way, the way this film is. So, like, you know, if I draw a comparison from the book to, you know, story-wise, completely different. Like, there are elements, you know, the first 20 minutes of of the film where he's holed up in the apartment and he's kind of, you know, talking about being a killer and stuff. That's very similar to the very first issue. The botched kill happens in a somewhat similar way, but then things go off the rails in the comic in a way that don't, like, people start seeing him and from other windows, and he starts having to kill a multitude of people, and it's like this, you know, kind of a big deal. This stuff about, you know, there's his fixer turning on him, that happens, but it's also, the story is like largely interspersed with you know, there's a cop that's after him, he takes him out, his fixer sends an assassin after him, takes him out, and because of all these kills that he's made, some Colombian cartel guys kind of get a hold of him, and they're like holding him responsible for kind of the disruption in their business model, and and kind of bring him into the fold. And that's where I'm at kind of in the story. You know, that's a good 70% of the way through the story. So wildly different. And they intersperse all of that storyline with his history growing up and his first time making a kill, and, you know, his origin story is weaved throughout that. So they take certain elements, locations, certain elements of the storytelling, certain moments, the fixer turn, things like that. But certainly, you know, and I was hoping I had the time to get to the end of it today, but you know, I'll let you know. I'll let you know later how it ends. But,
okay.
But you know, largely different. You know, like even if it ends in the same way, it's a lot different. You know,
but it sounds like it would have made a good TV show, a good streaming show, maybe. Eh?
Yeah, you know, it is the kind of thing that, you know, I felt myself wanting more, but I think that's what a good film does. You know, leaves you wanting a little bit more, and in a world where, like, you know, TV has kind of become, you know, I grew up and TV was trash and movies were where I was at.
Right. Now it's the opposite, right?
Now it's kind of the opposite. And when great films like this come along, and kudos to Netflix for making a movie like this and I think they put out like $200 million behind this thing, which is really wild for this type of script to have that kind of investment made.
Yeah. I'm looking, I can't find the budget, but that is... Well, I hope they can sustain that model, but that's pretty cool of them to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it seems the movies that they give limited releases to in the theater, this and last year's, like, Glass Onion, I thought, you know, those are two of my favorite films that I've seen in the last couple of years. Agreed. So it's like they're doing something right, and I'm just hoping that more of these type of it doesn't have to be a big action spectacle with tons of CGI. The best movies are really the ones that have the best stories. You know, it's really about the storytelling and the writing, and you know, and that's something the book and the film, I think, have in common, is that the writing is just superb and top-notch. And they take the internal monologues in different directions, where the film is hyper-focused on the idea of being a killer and what it is to be a hitman. The book delves into, like, kind of a much wider look at killers through history. He's, like, trying to create a self-justification for what he does,
right?
Comparing, you know, there's the whole, you know, no matter who you look at around the world, everyone's been killing everyone for thousands of years. I'm not any different, you know. There is this, like, overarching, like, him wanting to kind of justify why it is that he does what he does, which is something, you know, the film doesn't do. But I could see this adapted again by somebody else in a completely different way. maybe closer to the book or as a TV series, using this premise of the internal soliloquizing hitman who's thinking about what he's doing and what's going on, you know?
Yeah, well, if there ever is an adaptation of Scud the Disposable Assassin, we'll definitely have you on for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was happy to see this one get turned into, I don't know if Scud the Disposable Assassin, but I mean, well, I'm trying to think of the other comics I've reviewed with you over the years. I mean, we did review Invincible, and I know you're not a big Invincible guy.
Yeah, and you know, I'm the only person on earth that hasn't seen the cartoon, but everyone's raving about it, so eventually I'm going to have to watch it, right? So
yeah, you're going to have to sit down with me and watch it. Oh,
all right.
Goodness gracious, it's so good. You know, when I see books that I love finally get adapted into something else, and that not only is it as good or in some ways sometimes like maybe even better than the source material that I love so much, because I loved The Killer when I first read it. It's so long ago now that I can't remember the ending. We're going back like 15 years. Mm-hmm. But I've really been enjoying reading it again. And, you know, it's not an exact adaptation, and neither is Invincible. And I think that's good. The writers, you know, the people who are taking the reins on these products should be given a little levity to freshen things up. There's a lot of really great social commentary in this film, in The Killer, about kind of like being a self-starter, and like kind of like he's hiding out in a WeWork office. Mm-hmm. He's taking advantage of these little Amazon lockers to buy buying like the devices he needs to like steal the key card thing. He's buying it off of Amazon.
Right.
How he stays in Airbnb. It's like this commentary on like technology and the gig economy, and like there's like so many levels to it, and like, you know, a lot of that type of stuff didn't exist when the comic book was coming out, so they kind of replaced a lot of like the historical commentary with like this really like hyper modern day commentary about consumerism and capitalism, and like this world that we live in where you can kind of not exist. You stay in Airbnbs and you buy things online that are just arrive at a locker. Like there's this sense of anonymity that you can kind of have,
right?
You know, that is strange and like, you know, it's scary, but it makes it easier for this guy to do these horrible things.
Right. Yeah, to fall between the cracks. Yeah, and get away with it. Yeah.
So
good point. Very good point.
Yeah, so I think it's a deeply layered film, and I think people watch it on like just on the surface level and go, wow, this is really simple. He's just a revenge tale, and he just goes person to person killing them. But I don't think they're thinking about everything that he's actually talking about and saying and doing, and like there's a lot of nuance built into the whole story and everything that's happening and how it's happening. Execution is everything, right? And so I loved it. What a fantastic film. And I've been gushing to people about it, and I like, have you watched it? You want to watch it? I'll watch it again. I love it.
Well, you know what? I can't say it any better. I absolutely love this film. And, you know, when this review is posted, be sure to share it. Send it to those people, because, again, everyone needs to see this movie. I think it's great. And, yeah, maybe the opening is a little bit long. You got to get past that opening because the rest of the movie is exquisite. I definitely agree with you. I love this movie. So
yeah, and, you know, if there's any relation I can take to somebody who doesn't like it, is that there are no heroes in this film. There is nobody to root for. There's nobody to like, really. There's no one to be a fan of.
Yeah.
These are pretty much every character is without empathy. The cab driver included, you know, even the guy that were like, yeah, it sucks that, you know, it seems a little bit. Yeah, he didn't have much empathy. He didn't ask any questions.
Sure.
People get back in the car covered in blood, and he just didn't say anything. You know?
And that's
like,
and contrary to kind of the way people see movies now, I think it's absolutely fine that there's no one who you root for. I mean, you do root for the killer, but like you said, you're rooting for someone that's murdered all these people. So it's like an ironic kind of rooting. You find
yourself rooting for them, but then you step back and go, wait a second, like, I'm not rooting for this guy. You're just like, you're, you know, the tension is there in the room. And so you are, you're following him. We're in his head. So
right.
Just get in his mode. He kind of, you know, his monotone voice kind of hypnotizes you into thinking like, yeah, this guy is, you know, the protagonist. He's not, you know, he's not. There is no hero. And I think we need more movies like that.
Absolutely. I'm with you. Okay, so we want to thank you, Murad, for joining us. Thank you very much. And I'm glad that we could tie it back to the comic book review that we did more than 10 years ago. If you get a chance, please Google Comic Book Syndicate, the Killer graphic novel, and you can see us with Murad reviewing that book. And like I said, we'll definitely have you on in the near future, so be sure to see more guest appearances with Murad here. Anyway.
Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, next time maybe I'll sit you down and make you watch Invincible.
All right. We'll see about that. Okay. Awesome. Sounds good, man. Okay. Thanks again, eh?
Hey, no, thank you. Thank you.
All right.